It's time to rock and roll!
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Waffle Press Hangouts. I'm your host, Diego Crespo. With me today is my co-host, Gina Versa. Gene, I missed you. How are you
Oh,
doing?
thank you. Yeah, I'm doing good. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you again too. We gotta
Good to see
do
you.
dinner or lunch or all of the
Sure.
above soon because we got a
Mm-hmm.
lot to catch up on and talk about, and I know
That would
there's
be
some other
nice.
stuff in the works that we
Mm-hmm.
want to get back to. But it's great to see you. It's great to be back. Um,
Good to have
just
you back.
off the top, I will also tell everyone that retrospectives are returning the week of this episode. You're gonna have an interview with me and director Abel Ferrara that I'm very proud of, and it was so much fun. I'm still kind of riding the high of that conversation. And then fail blockbusters, and I'll just announce this right now. We will be doing one more Batman retrospective and Spider-Man retrospective, talking about the Flash and Into the Spider-Verse. Um, I may not be talking about the Flash that much, but Matt has thoughts when that
Oh,
comes out. So we'll see.
cursed
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. I may not be talking about Spider-Verse that much that episode either,
Mm-hmm.
because we're here to talk about it today on the podcast with our amazing guest, Jack Godwin. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again, guys, and for such a perfect movie to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, that 90s Spider-Man show.
Mm-hmm.
Every Spider-Man makes an appearance. I was going to say he makes an appearance in the movie. I mean, spoiler alert to all of it.
You know
Yeah.
what? I
But yeah,
I don't know. Did you
I
guys spot? I wouldn't think it would be a spoiler, but like, did you guys spot a Spider-Man the animated series Spider-Man anywhere in the
I
movie?
didn't. Yeah, because I noticed the '60s, the
Yeah.
Unlimited, Spider-Man
Mhm.
Unlimited, and then Spectacular Spider-Man.
yes.
So I
Yeah.
don't think he's in there. They could be
I
saving
think
him.
maybe that the art style of that particular like costume isn't like so different that
Mm-hmm.
you know clock it straight away.
Yeah.
Whereas
Uh,
spectacular, you're like, look at that short little fucker.
Yep.
yeah, he's so
That's
tiny.
Josh
I love
Keaton.
that.
There he is.
I was gonna say too, and then Spider-Man Unlimited and the '90s show, they're not in the same continuity, unlike
Mhm.
people. Yeah, so
Right.
Yeah. Well,
It
that's
was.
what we're here to talk about today.
Mhm.
We're gonna say our thoughts and then get into spoilers. But Jack, it's been a year since you were here. You were here
Oh
with Henry,
wow.
who's not with us today, and
Mhm.
we talked about Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Uh, what have you seen since then that you would recommend to people? It doesn't even have to be Spider-Man related. We just wanna get back into the swing of things with
hmm
podcasting.
What if I just not seen anything since Doctor Strange?
That would be incredible. I mean, Gene and I
well,
have
Yeah.
an old pal, Kirk, old friend of the show,
he
used to hop
doesn't
on once
watch
in a while.
anything.
He watches like a movie a year,
hmm
and I love it because I never know
Yeah.
what his response is going to be. So
Yeah, or what the movie will
That
be.
can go so wrong or so right. Like if you
hmm
went from Doctor Strange to Across the Spider Verse, I think that would be a pretty good, hit rate.
hmm
But it could be a lot of other things. Um, the clearest thing that comes to mind when you ask what I've seen lately, the last movie I saw that wasn't Spider Verse in the cinema was Cade, the Tortured Crossing, which I don't know if you guys have heard of.
No.
But have you guys heard of a man called Neil Breen?
Yes.
no
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
way. Yes.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, easiest way to describe Neil Breen is he's like, I don't know, like maybe the new Tommy Wiseau of like a
Hmm.
probably egocentric filmmaker who does everything in his films by himself. They're very, I don't. I mean, it always feels wrong to say something is just bad, but
You're right.
it's not quality filmmaking. It's very confusing. It's very entertaining, and I guess they're now getting popular enough that they're enough of a cult following that they're getting cinema releases. I don't know if they showed it in LA or anything, but it was the opening movie of the London Sci-Fi Film Festival,
Oh.
which is crazy. But I got to see it, and it's the sequel to Twisted Pair from 5 years ago, which was about Neil Breen playing finding new ways to put himself on screen, as you know, director, writer, cinematographer, caterer. Everything on set is him. He is also the lead hero, and he's the villain because he plays a man with an evil, maybe a cyborg, maybe AI, maybe magic, evil twin clone.
Okay.
Still don't really know what was going on in either of those movies, but if anyone like enjoys, you know, watching weird, out there cult movies, but like the bad side of cult movies,
Mhm.
they're so bad it's good side, more than anything else. I recommend Neil Breen to watch it. Watch it with some friends or in a cinema if you were as lucky as I was.
That seems like an experience watching it with other people too.
Mhm.
Was it the reaction like something like The Room where people are like throwing
Yeah.
spoons or anything?
It was interesting. It was at the Prince Charles Cinema, which prides itself on being Tommy Wiseau's favorite place to screen The Room.
Oh.
And I have seen The Room there and got to have a very awkward photo taken with Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it was there, and there was a lot of the crowd was very rowdy. They all knew what they were in for. Um, but unlike The Room, there isn't like years of people making rules
Yeah.
around like throwing the spoons and saying certain things. So in a way, like you got a lot of people doing their heckling at the screen in a way that you're like, oh come on, I kind of want you to shut up because this isn't that funny. But then
Yeah.
someone does something and you're like, oh, that's actually really funny, and I could see this becoming a rule of, you know, everyone says this when, and the crowd sort of like started doing things together like naturally.
Mhm.
So it was a real like interesting just cinema experience. I don't think I've seen something um like that really, other than The Room, in the cinema space.
Gonna have to see this now.
Yeah, I need
Putting
to
this on the
do.
Letterboxd watch list.
I need to do the Neil Breen deep dive, but we are
Uh-huh.
Twitter mutuals. I think
Mm.
he followed a
Oh,
lot
for
of film
real?
Twitter people recently.
Oh, okay.
It's not like
All
special,
right.
but
Okay.
I think he's trying to stir up hype for like he's found that like oh you like these people can be connected online. Like I mean that's basically how
Hmm.
Skinamarink got really popular. You
Yeah.
know, like people started talking about it online, and then it made over $1
Yeah.
million.
Yeah. All of
Like
that.
so, I think he's trying to do something like that. But
Yeah, so have you had a chance to watch one yet? Because I saw your face sort of light up when I said his name.
I know who he is, and his
Uh-huh.
reputation precedes him.
Yeah.
So
I
I
think that
found that very
yeah.
exciting.
There's probably a lot of people as well who have seen clips or something go around without
Yeah.
actually knowing what it's from or something. But
Mhm.
it's luckily I think it's definitely the kind of filmmaker you can watch clips from, because it doesn't matter what you get spoiled. In context, you will understand less. So,
Hmm.
Oh,
so
good.
you tip him to your heart's content, and you'll still want to watch the movie
Hmm.
if that's your kind of thing, anyway.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's the power of cinema. You know, it's to are you going to get an experience like that with anything else? You know, like that specific sort of like, is it bad? Is it good? Is it so bad it's good? It's
Oh,
just like you know, you
yeah,
can't put it in a box.
yeah, and I think even like with something like The Room is so well known, and you got like a movie about The Room
Yeah.
is also huge, so it's so in the culture that uh anyone who's like into that kind of stuff, I think there's probably a big crossover between people who are into those kind of films and also people who like being part of the in crowd who know about it before
Mhm.
other people. Um, and Neil Breen's in that special place where like people know about him, but like not everyone. Whereas I feel like everyone kind of knows The Room now.
Yeah.
So I don't know
Yeah.
what else there would be on that sort of level. Right now, at least.
Hmm.
This is a much more positive version of that because I do find their lo-fi, low budget filmmaking genuinely impressive and heartwarming. The Wakaliwood guys, I don't know if
Oh
you
yeah.
know them.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's it's just their community making the movies they want to replicate from like Hollywood and like the big budget stuff, and they can't afford it, but like it they really go to show that like it doesn't fucking matter. Like if you love movies and you're gonna go make something, like maybe it doesn't even all work, but it can be like super engaging and entertaining, and it's just like I have the utmost genuine respect for that entire filmmaking group.
Yeah.
Check out the Hollywood guys. It's the best.
Yeah, I mean that's always I have actually watched quite a lot of like big air quotes bad movies over
Yeah.
the last couple of years because I actually ended up I was doing a master's in a film related course and I ended up writing a dissertation on So Bad It's Good movies. So it's been like all I've been watching, and the more you watch that kind of thing, the more you start questioning what is good and what is bad, and you start like having like a lot of love and affection for the people who make stuff that everyone pretty much agrees is bad, but then you start seeing stuff in it and a lot of it is just like this low budget sort of they're out there doing weird wild stuff, and you add 20-30 years on it and it becomes a cult movie and people start respecting it a lot more.
Yeah, a lot of charm to them, I think.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was a great suggestion. Gene, what about you? What have you seen recently?
Oh, okay. I want to throw this one out there just like immediately. Have you guys heard of Fool's Paradise? It's by Charlie Day.
I have
from
heard of
Always
that.
Sunny.
Yes, I'm always curious about what Charlie Day is doing. Well, I guess I'm not always curious. I like
Yeah.
Charlie Day. I like It's Always Sunny.
Mhm.
I was looking forward to watching this, and then I heard a lot of negative stuff actually.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to hear anyone want to talk about it
Like just
positively.
Yeah, it's so I was like reading into it, so it's like it took him like 5 years to actually get it distributed. I think he filmed it like 2018. And it's basically it's like I think I did enjoy this because it's just so like stupid. Like just the stuff happening on screen, like it's like pretty funny. But basically it's like Charlie Day, he got all his like celebrity friends and like some money and made a Charlie Chaplin movie. And the whole movie he doesn't talk. He just does like a Charlie Chaplin thing, and he only says like one word in the movie at the very end, and it's just like him expressing himself because it's like this actor. He's like this. You guys know like Being There with like Peter Sellers, like where the character's like mute and just like reacting off of things. He doesn't really. I don't know like what kind of condition he has, but he's basically like that, and he stumbles on a movie set. Looks like the star who dies after and then replaces him. His name is was it Latte Pronto? Because someone misinterprets his name, and it's just like his agent is Ken Jeong from Community, and they're just like kind of like lampooning the Hollywood scene, but it's just like so like stupid, and it's just like just the weirdest stuff happens because then it gets into like weird conspiracy stuff, or like Common is just like a homeless guy he encounters, and for 5 minutes he starts talking about like things like that, and it's just so like bizarre that this actually got made, and you could see it in a theater, and I don't know how else to describe it. It's just really like bizarre. It's just such a bizarre movie that I kind of enjoyed it. Yeah, just the
Do
fact that
you
it's like Charlie Day too. Yeah.
I was gonna say, do you have any idea why it got a negative reception?
Well, I mean, if people don't like it, I surely like won't defend it too much. But I think like they thought it was a certain type of film when it wasn't. I don't know. This is me putting my tinfoil hat on, but I think he was legitimately trying to make like a Charlie Chaplin movie or whatever. And I don't know. Maybe people didn't get it, but yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. They filmed some scenes actually by my old apartment, so that's interesting
Oh,
too. So
really?
yeah, it's
Oh,
like a little park around there. I'm like,
oh,
oh, I know there.
that's wild.
Yeah, but it's like I don't know. He's pretty charming in it. It's just like he just doesn't talk, and it's just Charlie Day reacting and just doing his like facial expressions and stuff, and just like him, just like people are just like reacting to him. So it's like Kate Beckinsale or like Adrian Brody, and they're just having these whole elaborate like conversations with a man that doesn't talk. So just leave it.
I do want to watch it still.
Yeah. No, you probably
yeah,
not. You probably won't like it.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, the positives seem to be
Uh-huh. Have you
like
heard positives?
Charlie Day. People just love Charlie Day in the movie,
Yeah.
and they just think he needs some work as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Like I guess Guillermo del Toro, when he saw the first cut like 2-3 years ago,
Okay.
because I think people forget it was shot like in 2019 or 2018.
Yeah.
He gave like notes, and he was like, he had him do like 20 minutes of reshoots, like 20-minute sections of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That helped it out, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess not enough, but
Yeah.
like I also just love that Guillermo del Toro's friends with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, Charlie Day, your first movie. Here's my advice. I'm gonna go make miniatures with Steven Spielberg tomorrow." I'm like, "What the fuck? What a
Yeah.
life, man!"
What a nice guy.
Yeah,
I'd love to. I like to think that Guillermo del Toro would do that for most people, but most
Mhm.
people wouldn't think to ask Guillermo del Toro that because they
Yeah.
would be intimidated that he would say, "No, I don't have time for that. I have a million other projects, some of which will get made."
Yeah. Some.
Yeah, so we'll see about that at the Mountains of Madness.
Mhm.
Speaking of madness, I'll just do my last recommendation real quick. It's directed by Gene's guy Hideaki Anno.
Mhm.
He made a movie called Love and Pop back in
Mm.
1998. It's done completely on like DV tape footage, but like
Yeah.
the lenses are weird, and the movie is a lot.
Yes. He's a
It,
strange man. A very strange person.
he is, but I think he's a genius,
Yes, he is.
and it felt like I was watching a movie, like storyboards for a movie that he was going to make animated.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a complete movie on its own. And let me read the description.
Yeah.
Tokyo schoolgirl Hiromi and her friends engage in a practice known as Enjo Kosai, or compensated dating, where older men pay young girls for dates. Hiromi plunges deeper into this world to raise money for an expensive ring. That doesn't even scratch the surface of what the movie's about. I didn't really know the premise going into it. I was just like,
Mhm.
oh, I liked Shin Godzilla. People like
Mhm.
Evangelion. Or what? That's what he did, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Evangelion.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start watching more of his stuff, and I saw this movie he did was on YouTube because
Yeah.
it's not publicly available anywhere.
Right.
So sorry, but that's what we're having to resort to with a lot happening in the industry right now.
Yeah.
With stuff getting taken off by taxes. This is a separate issue, obviously, but
Mhm.
it's not publicly available, so I wanted to watch it. Yeah, it was like a lot, but I do think I loved it, and I would recommend it. I don't know if I would recommend it as the first movie you watch from this artist, though. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I think I have to take Gene's recommendation and just finally watch Evangelion.
Only
And
26 episodes.
yeah, and then go back to the rest of his filmography, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm fascinated by this movie. I don't really know how to talk about it yet.
Yeah.
So
That's funny. His other movie came out too. That's just as like weird and complex. Shin Kamen Rider.
yeah,
I saw it. Yeah.
I heard that one's a
I'm
little
very
dense.
excited for that.
It.
I am a huge fan of his. I love Evangelion. It's
Nice.
one of my favorite shows, and End of Evangelion is easily top 10 movies of all time for me.
Yes.
I have not seen like I don't think I've seen much else. I've seen Shin Godzilla.
Mhm.
And
That
I
seems
think
to be
that's
the
it,
one that
but
broke out like a lot.
yeah, I'm like I keep giving him money to do things.
Yeah. As
Yeah.
you should, as we all should,
Yeah.
because we're huge pro Shin Godzilla fans on this podcast.
Mhm.
Absolutely, that's a fucking incredible movie, unbelievable movie. Yeah, I
Love
guess
that guy.
we just headed into the other incredible movie you're here to talk about today, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3. No, we're here to talk about Across the Spider-Verse.
Mhm.
Fuck. Okay, how do we even do this? I guess quick spoiler-free thoughts. Thumbs up or thumbs down across the panel.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up, Gene. Okay,
Yeah.
Jack.
1 million thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thumbs down. No, thumbs up. Yeah, two thumbs up.
Ooh.
Okay, we're just gonna get into spoilers now. So, because everyone's gonna watch this movie,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say pause and
everyone.
come back and watch it. Just watch it now because you've seen the movie or you're going to see the movie. Okay, so, Jack, as the guest, have you collected your thoughts enough to describe your reaction to this movie?
I think I no is the answer. I've not collected my thoughts clearly. No, I think that the movie was I try to avoid the hype a lot. I
Right.
didn't watch any trailers, which is unusual for me. Because I just knew from as soon as they announced it that it was a movie that existed with the same team and everything. I was like, okay, it's going to be good. It's going to be worth watching. Um, and it really lived up to what I wanted from it, which is to find like new story beats and like character dimensions to like dig into. And I think they did a really good job of finding new ways to do what the first one did, which is like explore the Spider-Man mythos and
Mhm.
just like go into those themes using all these crazy extra elements without them like overloading it. You know,
Yeah.
this movie is a part one, but I felt satisfied with it. There is a little bit of that, you know. Can I say I love this movie when it's a part one? I don't know how everything's
Mhm.
going to be resolved, but you've got like some complete character arcs in here and um a lot to think about in terms of how they just discuss the characters, and it was a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, my general thoughts are just like all positive, to the point that like coming out, I was almost like looking for negatives, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and then they're so few and far between, or they're things that are answered by, well, they could address that in the next one, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the animation is, you know, it's incredible, and the cast are all perfectly picked, and they do a great job with the voice acting, and it was. I know that when me and Henry did our review of No Way Home, we were like generally positive on it,
Mhm.
with the caveat that we were like, yeah, kind of like with that marks for the nostalgia and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Um, over time, that's fallen away, but this comes out and it just feels like No Way Home found dead. You know,
Yeah,
like
the Virgin No Way Home versus the Chad Spider Verse.
Yeah.
it really is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
The
really
more you
is.
rewatched No Way Home, the less it was appealing for you. I
Mhm.
remember.
Yeah, and there's I mean, one thing about a lot of the recent MCU movies, not all of them, but there are some of just like where there doesn't feel like much of a art direction, you know.
No, or at
And
all. Yeah.
this is just like they got the money to the right places, and they're really imaginative to the point that like you can kind of get to the end and start forgetting about some of the really interesting animation flourishes they have like at the start of the movie,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, all good from me. Like I've very few criticism. I just have 1,000 like small things to
Mhm.
say about it. You know.
Yeah.
I just before Gene goes, I want to say the entire team did not return. I do have to fix this or to
Mm.
mention this. Directors Rodney Rothman, Peter Ramsey, and Bob Persichetti
Mhm.
from the first film, I believe, are executive producers this time,
Yeah.
but not
Mhm.
not
Like
directors.
actively. Yeah.
The new directors are Joaquin Dos Santos, my boy from Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, who did some fucking
Mm.
incredible episodes on those runs.
Mhm.
It's super cool to see him get like his shot at the big time here and just fucking nail it. Along with directors Justin K. Thompson and Kemp Powers. So, um, everyone's still killing it. You know, everyone else I think is basically the same. I think there's a new writer,
Mhm.
Dave Callahan.
Mhm.
This not to dunk on someone. I hope I never have to meet. but this is the best thing he's ever had his name attached to. I don't need to get into it.
Okay.
But when I saw his name was attached in the lead up to this movie, that's when I was like, oh no. Doesn't matter now, obviously.
Yeah.
But that was my moment where I had to pause for a second, and I was like, oh shit, are they gonna fuck this up? But Gene, go ahead. Sorry, I just need to say that.
No, it's all right. Yeah, no, I loved it. Love this movie. Yeah, I saw it opening night. It was like a lot of people seeing this. I've noticed like they're just like crowds and crowds. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting, because I guess in the 5 years it really caught like the audience. But yeah, no, it was yeah, no, it's incredible. It's everything I love about Spider-Man in one movie. The artwork is great. There's different art styles for each universe. Love that. All the character stuff is great. You know, I love the storylines that they chose, like for Gwen, for Miles, 2099, and then Peter B. Parker. Yeah, they made them all interesting. Like the fact that they give Spider-Man like a kid and like a wife, which the Marvel editorial will never do.
And they fucking had a heart attack watching this movie. They're like,
Yeah, they're
people
like,
don't like this, right? People are gonna hate this, right? And it's like, no, we all loved it. You
yeah.
fucking coward, you spineless
Mhm.
sheep. Sorry, everyone
No,
knows
no,
I'm gonna go to war with Marvel editorial for this.
Yeah, no, they don't understand that character really.
No, they don't.
Yeah,
They're
they
fucking. I'm gonna Dan Slott. I'm coming for
Dan
you.
Slott.
I defended you for so
Oh,
long. Sorry.
Oh wait,
I'm
no,
like,
I
I'm
mean,
getting so angry. I need to let
wait,
Gene
no,
finish because he's bringing up
no.
great stuff.
well, I'm gonna come back to that because I want to.
Okay.
I want to yell about things too.
yeah, no, I want to hear you yell. But no, yeah, I loved it, and the storyline I thought was like, yeah, like the storyline was like great because it's like it kind of had the cliches of like I don't know, like you guys know like Star Trek with like Destiny and all that.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
I do. That
yeah,
question's really for Jack.
but yeah,
Uh,
like,
I don't think so, really.
oh, where it's like, some stuff is like fated to happen, but I love the fact that like this movie it kind of like went on that where it's like there's like constants in the Spider-Man mythos, like Uncle Ben has to die, or like
Mhm.
was it Captain Stacy has to die, and then they're like Miles is just like, oh, I'm gonna make my own path or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's a really nice message, I guess. And yeah, no, I was really appreciating just like the writing and everything, and yeah, no, I
Yeah,
just loved it. But
I think if we're going into like slightly spoilery
Oh, we can go
talks,
full
like
spoilers
yes, yeah,
now.
we
I
can.
think
sure.
let's just go fucking buck wild.
Yeah.
The fact I going with what you're saying, Gene. I think like the idea of Miles breaking away from the fate uh that he's destined, and changing canon events
Mm-hmm.
is something I really liked, because a lot of what this movie does is present like, okay, there's like pretty much a society of spider people,
Yeah.
but Miles is not involved and he is ostracized from it. And then when he's brought in, there, the conflict of the film is like you're behind him, but also like he is separate from them. He's isolated.
Mm-hmm.
He's not even allowed to be part of the team that are meant to be multiverse versions of him.
Mm-hmm.
And it fits so well with what they were saying about his character in his personal life with his parents and how they talked about his future.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think in a meta way was a lot of fun to think about how people talk about Miles as Spider-Man. Like there's been a lot, like, as whenever the topic comes up on Twitter or something, there's people who will come in and be like, Miles Morales is Miles Morales. He's not Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
People who are very like, Peter Parker is the one true Spider-Man, and
Right.
there's nothing else. And I think there is something to making a story about him being kind of rejected from that. Like, no, you're not doing Spider-Man right, or
Mm-hmm.
you're not a part of this club. And it feels like this, and maybe more so in the sequel, they're kind of making a case for like why Miles is important, and why
Yeah.
his differences are like, uh are still like connected back to Spider-Man in all the important ways.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's like the No Homers Club. They could have one Homer. They couldn't
Yeah.
have him. But no, yeah, I love that too. And then his character arc too, where it's like he felt very like isolated from his friends from the first movie because they were like they're all in the Spider what's it? In the Spider-Verse
Spider
Club.
Society.
Spider Society. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, no, like the fact that he hadn't heard from them in like 16 months, and then when he finally like sees them again, they're trying to like kind of like I don't know, yeah, like do like force him to like go through this like canon event without really like his consideration. Like, there's some really like deep sort of like emotional scenes and just like how kind of betrayed he feels by the other spider friends of his. It's like sad to watch, I felt.
Yeah, like I guess I'll just give my thoughts on it. Yeah, I loved it. If you follow me on Letterboxd, you saw the immediate like 5 stars on it. That doesn't mean I don't have hangups, and I
Yeah,
will
yeah.
get to them
Yeah, of
because
course.
I think they should be talked about because
Mhm.
they're not just related to this movie. It's kind of my opinion on Spider-Man media in general right now.
Mhm.
So some of the problems are not even this movie's fault. It's stuff I feel deeply passionate about.
Sure, sure.
And some problems maybe I just have questions right now about the movie.
Okay.
But it is phenomenal. It is maybe the best theater experience I've had in years with an animated movie. It probably is the best theater experience I've had with an animated movie in years. To the point about like Miles as Spider-Man too, I find it really fascinating that he is the Spider-Man who from jump understands he has to help people.
Hmm.
Peter Parker did not, right? That's his whole thing with he has to learn with great power comes great responsibility. Miles has that from the get-go because he's so involved with his family and community. Peter Parker is isolated more, which is why I think that isolation you guys brought up too creates such a great character dissonance for Miles, where it's like he's so used to being able to connect with people. Now he's finally met and understood other spider people like him, and he
Mhm.
has to be separated from them. And that dissonance causes like a dissonance with his family and community too. He's not really the well-oiled machine he is with everyone back home, except for Genki, who's just chilling and like
Oh yeah.
smoking weed and playing video games. He's
Yeah.
not smoking weed, but he
Right.
basically is.
How did you
Um,
guys?
Yeah.
How did you guys feel about that? Because I felt like the line where he's like, "Oh, I'm not your guy in a chair," was like, "Okay, it's like,
I'm
all
glad
right."
here's what I'll say about that. I'm
Yeah.
glad I'm not the only person who hates the direction of the MCU Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Um,
I
Tom Holland's the
I-
one live action Spider-Man who doesn't make an appearance. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I think I think it's good to have healthy boundaries with your
Yeah.
friends. And
Yes.
say I don't want to,
Mhm.
be involved in your vigilantism. No, did you guys notice at least in one of those scenes he's playing Spider-Man PS4?
Oh, is he?
He's
I
actually
didn't notice
playing
Yeah.
that.
Spider-Man 2 PS5.
Oh, okay.
Someone caught it
Marvel's
on Twitter.
Spider-Man 2.
Mm.
Yeah,
PS5.
Insomniac Spider-Man
new
2.
game.
Someone caught it on Twitter and uploaded it, and I'm like, that's illegal, but that's really cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Cross promotional.
Yeah, I mean, that's the true like magic trick of these movies. Everything in these Spider-Verse movies, apart from the actual characters and their characterization, is stuff I never want to see in Spider-Man after this
Mhm.
ever again. I didn't want to see it before this happened, you know?
Mhm.
I think Spider-Man thrives as a character with individuality, be it Peter Parker, Miles Morales, Gwen Stacy, whoever
Mhm.
has the spider suit on. I don't care about a Spider-Verse of interconnectivity, the webs, the totems from the comic
Mhm.
books. If you don't know what those are, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter because they're fucking stupid. All these like Madam Web is so
Mhm.
ridiculous. Like she's a fun campy looking villain.
Mhm.
Just the worst parts of the last 3 decades of comics is kind of packed into the DNA of this movie. But somehow,
Mhm.
some fucking way, they've created an event film that has united people across the world, and it's so good and impressive and fun and emotional, and I don't understand how they did it because I don't give a fuck about Ben Riley.
Oh.
This is the most I've
is
ever
it-
liked Ben
yeah.
Riley as the butt of a joke. and nerds got really mad at that online. So they can all suck my dick.
You know what? I'm like really that Ben Riley thing is interesting to me because the first thing I saw when that came up in the movie, I thought I think there was like one joke, and I was like, oh, that's great. And then second joke, oh, people are gonna be mad about it. You know, straight up. And I kind of get why, because they do kind of make Ben Riley the punching bag of like, he becomes representative of like edgy 90s comics a bit.
Yeah.
Which, and I like Ben Riley in the comics. And my answer to that, which I think most people agree with, worse things have happened to Ben Riley in the comics. If you're talking about bad things happening to the characters you like, that's a character who's been through all kinds of metaphorical trash compactors of bad ideas and good ideas, and bad ideas done well, good ideas done badly. But
they keep reusing them too.
Yeah, and and I think like the joke of him just being like vocalizing how like, oh no, I'm being attacked by my own traumatic memories. that's actually quite Ben Riley, and that's funny. When it gets a bit further away, when it becomes like almost like a gag about like Rob Liefeld type stuff. And that went less well for me, but I can't imagine getting annoyed about a character who originated in a Clone Saga, one of the most spiraling, confusing, wide range of quality events ever. So
I feel
it's hard to get that mad about it,
Yeah, I feel like you've read the whole Clone Saga too, which I haven't even done.
Oh yeah, it's better than you'd think, but there's a reason it has this reputation.
I mean, that's another point of conversation I think we could talk about as all Spider-Man heads here, and of course Jack with that 90s Spider-Man show. Spider-Man, it doesn't really offer anything to me anymore in any iteration that's not this franchise or the Insomniac games. Like that doesn't mean like I'm done with Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man will always be my number one best boy, right? The Kendall Roy of comics, if you will. My eldest boy. But like the comics is just like they've so like stunted that character's potential at this point that like it's gonna be like another decade before anything interesting happens in comics or Spider-Man ever again. And then there's the whole thing where it's like he does have to serve like 3 separate corporations' interests at this point. Like the character of Spider-Man.
Yeah, like Disney, Marvel, Sony. Yeah.
Like that's fucking like he had no chance. There was no chance for any interesting Spider-Man stuff to happen, which makes these movies even more impressive and the MCU Spider-Man trajectory far more understandable.
Right.
Yeah. I think it is. I'm picturing the image is. I swear I don't just talk about Spider-Man the animated series, but I guess it's relevant. But when the in the dream sequence where the symbiote is and his Spider-Man costume are fighting over him, which I guess happens in the comics too. And they're like pulling him by his arms, and that really is like the thing with Sony and Marvel. And there's all kinds of like. Yeah, I do. It does feel like this film is like the fact that they creatively got to do any of this is like really impressive. Because it feels like there's such a like restriction on what he can be in all other media. Even to the fact like I don't know if people know that like in the comics like Peter Parker's not allowed to drink.
Yeah,
and
weird lore bullshit.
They make a kind of make it a character trait a bit, like that he doesn't drink and he can't handle his alcohol. And it's not like I need every character to be boozing for me to think they're cool or something.
Yeah,
but like there's lots of things like that because he is such a big money maker. And then the ways they do shake it up are very repetitive and kind of end up like retroactively like affecting previous things as well. Luckily, I think like my main sort of takeaway from a lot of Spider-Man comic discourse, for anyone who's not involved in any of that on Twitter, not that I'm like in arguments or anything with Twitter people about it, but people are very angry right now for a lot of
run.
a lot of stuff with the current run, which is quite I I'm like I read it on Marvel Unlimited, so I'm like 6 months behind, and I'm like in a traffic jam, like seeing explosions further down the road. I'm like, oh man, I've got like 6 issues until apparently I'm gonna want to boycott this. But yeah, there's some good stuff, I'll say, in the new stuff, but I am getting I'm getting tired of it, and after reading a lot of old comics the last few years, the good thing about all of this is that you can always go back. There's all these good runs out there. There's so many good Spider-Man comics. Whether you want to go all the way back to the 60s for Stan Lee, or you want to read some 70s, 80s stuff, there's all kinds of good runs out there that aren't from an era where everything had to be so tightly connected to events. And anyone who is like maybe like a comic book movie fan but not a comic reader, you might have issues thinking like, oh, I kind of wish like for Guardians 3 James Gunn got to do a direct sequel to 2 without having to worry about what happened to his characters in the Avengers movies. And the comics are that just 24/7 right now. Like everything is affected by events from other characters and their own events. And even going back to the original Spider-Verse comics, I'm currently reading, I think, the 3rd Spider-Verse event, and I just like, I'm quite like set on my conclusion that those comics are bad.
You're correct. That is an apt conclusion.
And they make the movie just looks even more impressive in comparison to them, because it's doing everything better with the same, you know, chess pieces. And the individual characters from the Spider-Verse have had really strong comics. Spider-Gwen's solo series has had a few different runs that kept getting cancelled or relaunched, but I really like the Spider-Gwen comics. They're really good, and there was a great adaptation of her story in this movie. I felt like we kind of got a mini Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider, whatever she's called now, story in there that they drew from the comics. And I hope that, like, well, I was going to say I hope people watch this movie and then it makes them want to go read the comics. But, like, I don't really know where you land now, like, where if you jump in right now and you go, I'll read the Spider-Verse comic, then you might just be like, oh, this is like the movie, but worse. I'm not going to read the comics anymore. You know?
Read the individual spin-offs.
Yeah, the miniseries have been good. The Spider-Punk mini that came out like last year, I think, written by Cody Ziegler, that is really good. And it's a lot of fun. It's a bit different from the movies, Hobie, but like they're both great. And that's worth reading. But like, see, I think that's a good example, because Hobie in this movie, you know that he isn't gonna follow the pack, so it makes so much sense when stuff starts going down and he just bones out and he's like, yeah, I'm done. And that kind of thing would not happen in the comic, because he has to be there in every issue. And so even if you're thinking, wait, why would Spider-Punk even be here, it doesn't matter, because this isn't about the characters. This is about like getting some one-liners and focusing on the plot, which isn't particularly interesting. But yeah, I'm amped up about comics right now, because like Dan Slott, who much like you, Diego, I have been a long time defender of, has come back with the Spider-Verse event again, which is not good. And um, and it has now announced that he's coming back to do Superior Spider-Man again,
Yeah.
which is frustrating for me because I really like that original one he did. Then they relaunched it, written by Christos Gage, and I really liked that series, and it got cancelled. And now it's back again, but Dan Slott's doing it, and we don't need to keep rehashing these ideas.
No, we
No.
don't. And yeah, I wanted to hear your thoughts on that because you had raised a point earlier, as I also got upset at comics.
Mhm.
And just like that original Superior Spider-Man run, it has wonky stuff at the beginning and some
Oh, yeah.
very, how do I say, problematic elements at the
Yeah.
top that people have rightfully criticized, and I'm completely in agreement with. In regards to some, I'll just say, very very rapey vibes.
Mhm.
Just a heads up there. So it's like I can't even fully endorse that comic, obviously, but like by the end of it, it is such a love letter to Peter Parker's Spider-Man, which is what people felt the opposite of when it was first announced, you know.
Mhm.
And even though it was only 10 years ago, people were still like, how are you going to kill off Peter Parker and make Doc Ock Spider-Man? That's insulting the character. And it's like, well, he's going to come back.
Yeah.
Like
Comics.
no one talked about that back then, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, it's the whole thing. Like Jackie brought up, like people are furious right now with Spider-Man comics because they're killing off Kamala Khan in Spider-Man, which is, you know, idiotic and stupid. And that's almost as stupid as if I was watching like the Book of Boba Fett, and if for some reason they resolved stuff from season 2 of The Mandalorian, that would
Yeah.
upset me, and that would turn me off to both shows completely forever, right? Like that would be, no one would be that stupid to do that though.
Mhm.
But like, you know, people are upset about that, and it's just like it's so hard to get people to read comics because there's always something like that happening now, because everything has to service something else, has to serve something else, and then it's like, even an interesting idea like Spider-Gwen. I also did like that initial run of comics, by the way. Big,
Mhm.
it's like that and Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel hitting within like a year of each other. I was
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
maybe comics are back, and like, no, I
Mhm.
dropped out like a year after that, but
Yeah.
there's like signs of life there. It totally is just like these structural things from the business side, and this need to adhere to a semblance of canon for the old nerds who are like, well, this is what they've been for so long.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which brings me to my
Well,
ultimate point about how this movie is basically crying out for people to stop giving a fuck about that stuff,
Mhm.
because I think metatextually this movie works much better than it does like structurally as a regular movie story, and I'm okay with that. I am surprised to see less pushback against that, though, if that makes sense. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Mhm.
Like I'm not criticizing the movie for its decision to be that or to do that,
right.
but I am just surprised when people are like not having a problem with that either, I
I
guess.
I have seen a lot of cryptic tweets, which I was kind of half ignoring because I was avoiding spoilers before I watched it, of like comic people being like, "Great movie, have some real issues with certain things,
Mhm.
but I won't go into them because of
Mhm.
spoilers." And there's a lot of that, so I don't know if that's related or whether they're all just mad about Ben Riley.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe they are. He's Ben
But
Riley.
is there anything in like specific that you were expecting people to get upset about with this?
um I mean, just straight up calling stuff canon and being like, oh
Mhm.
well, Miles can break it because he's the anomaly. Like that's
Mhm.
where it's all leading to, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't think the movie's very subtle about that. I don't think it has to be or should be. That's where it's all leading to. This is Matrix Reloaded. The next one will be Matrix Revolutions.
Yeah.
And for people that are upset about that statement, you're wrong. Those movies are awesome, especially
Mhm.
Revolutions.
Yeah.
Um, but like, I think, yeah, like, oh, an Uncle Ben has to die. For Miles, that's his uncle. Um, and then a police captain has to die. And it's like that's his dad now. And it's
Mhm.
like
Mm.
these are different rules that I also think are kind of a little wonky in the movie. I think
Mhm.
it's a little loose. I can
Mhm.
roll with it, but I had a conversation with another friend of mine who was like, I don't really buy this, because it feels like for a movie that's so metatextually clever, no one brings up that like, well, Miles already had his tragedy with his
Mhm.
uncle. And if he's an anomaly, then why does he have to adhere to it? Like, I don't know. Stuff
Right.
that weird stuff. But I guess in regards to your question, Jack, like, I think the thing that I was most surprised by, like, not having pushback was Peter Parker as a dad. And it turns out because most
Right.
people are like me and just want to see Peter Parker do other things besides be a sad loser all the
Yeah.
time, you know? Like that is part of his charm. But then
Yeah.
even the first Spider-Verse movie like evolved that into a new thing. It's a middle-aged Spider-Man who's got different problems than if he was a
Yeah.
teen, you know?
Yeah.
And there's still things to overcome. And I'm gonna get all fucking like I'm gonna be preaching right now from my soapbox. But like I do think a big part of this is like nerds are not willing to embrace change because it's like, well, if these things that have been like so continuous on this singular foundation, if those change, like, well, everything else can change. Like I need this to be constant. I need this to be like a solid thing I can go back to and look to all the time. And it's like, you know, I hate to break it to you, but nothing in life is like that, you know. Let
Yeah.
alone art. Like art can you can regurgitate art like a lot has been in the last decade of movies. And
Yeah.
you know, we've seen the significant shortcomings of that. And if we don't evolve our art, it's probably a bad sign for not evolving the rest of the world around us, including our own lives. So that's
also
my preaching for the day.
I also think that it barely stands up with a character that has what is it like 60 years or
Yeah, 60 years.
60 of comics. You know,
Yeah.
there's like even if you're going up until the point where I think a lot of people think the comics kind of went off the rails with like One More Day and the I guess the ultimate sort of like Peter Parker can't grow up and get married because we're going to use magic to undo it.
Yeah.
And even if you're going up to that, that's still decades of Spider-Man stories of him being young. And the funny thing is, the start of that run involves it involves him being like he's with Mary Jane, but they're separated for a while, and they're dealing with the difficulties of a relationship being apart, but not really being apart. And then he becomes a high school teacher, and those stories of him being a high school teacher, like trying to look after his students and finding out one of them is troubled, and then helping her as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Those are really good stories, and I think showed an evolution. And then they ended that run with, you know, undoing so much of it. And I think, yeah, like that was the first thing I thought when you see him, you know, with in this movie. You see that Peter Parker going back to Mary Jane and him sort of saying like, "You didn't take the baby with you, did you?" You know, and that kind of thing. It's like that way he can kind of be kind of a goofy character who kind of screws around and gets things wrong still, and is funny, but still like, you know, develop in his life.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to see a Peter Parker who is fully functional. But
Right.
that doesn't mean a Peter Parker who's, you know, 19
Stunted.
for forever, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though Tom Holland probably will look that age forever.
No, yeah, he will. That's why he could play Spider-Man for another 10 years. You know what I
10
mean?
years. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I hope we get more of that in the next movie as well, because that would be like another one of these like small complaints I had would be stuff like I would have just liked to have more of his character. I would have liked to have more of him and Miles talking.
Yeah.
And it didn't necessarily feel like there was room in the movie for it. And I just hope that means that we're getting more of that in the next one. Because for instance, I got so much good Spider-Gwen that, you know, I I felt okay that maybe like certain storytelling things that felt almost like pragmatic. Like we got a bit of Oscar Isaac's Spider-Man 2099,
Mhm.
but like primarily like kind of as an antagonist, which I
Yeah.
thought was kind of like a smart move because in those comics, which are worth reading, but a real mixed bag. um, and they in those comics, he's kind of a douchebag. Like he's kind of uh, often selfish or just like I don't know. There's like a complicated psychology to him, but he's like deep down a good person, and I think that means he could be that character for this, and then maybe in the next one we get more of the hero side of him, like
Mhm.
more of a different side of him, and that's why it's hard sometimes to like. I almost don't know if this is quite a 5-star movie for me or not because there's a number of things which I'm thinking, well, yeah, sure, they'll do that in the next one. And I have been burned by that quite a few
Oh.
times,
Yeah.
and
That's what
I
they
am
always
getting
say.
I'm getting flashbacks to, in like so many conversations I'd had about the MCU prior to Endgame where I sometimes I'd been on both sides of the argument, but like a lot of the time I'd say, I really wish like we got to see a conversation between these characters, or for this to be properly resolved. And then someone would say, "Yeah, but they'll do that in the next one." And then I'd say, "I bet they're not, though." And then they don't, and then they
Yep.
just don't. And
Never did.
I think like when I saw Endgame, um, I felt like I couldn't express how much I didn't like it because I didn't quite understand why I didn't like it so much, and also everyone was so excited about it. I didn't want to be like the one guy. Well, there's Diego, so one of two guys yelling about how it's bad.
Yeah.
But like as time goes on, the more I'm just like, yeah, Endgame does not hold up, and it doesn't serve Infinity War as a movie. It doesn't
No.
serve. It's not a good part two to the part one. So there's definitely room for the next one to be disappointment.
Hmm.
But I do think that there's a lot in this movie which they set up in a way where it's quite safe, like there isn't a lot of unresolved stuff in this that there's not like head scratches where you're like, how are they gonna untangle this mess of law they've made.
Right.
There's nothing like that. It feels like, yeah, everything's ramping up, we've added a few new elements, and you can see stuff like the other Miles, who is now like the Prowler.
Hmm.
You can understand, you can kind of guess where they're going, like having Miles have a comparison of like, this is you if you didn't have the good things in your life.
Yeah. It's like It's a
And
Wonderful Life sort of story.
yeah, it totally
Yeah.
is. And you can see them going that way with it, and maybe even saying something about like how privilege and luck can kind of like completely transform your situation and the things you do. Because like when you think like that version of Miles doesn't seem like a hero, um, and maybe in the scheme of things that they're talking about, like from the Spider Society side of things, that just makes him canonically a bad guy, and that's a very simple way to look at it. So you can see where they're going, but it doesn't feel like they've trapped themselves in a box that, the MCU often just like they get into a corner and they'll be like, oh, how are they going to get out of this one? And then the answer is usually like, uh, yeah, there was a door in this corner actually, and
Yeah.
it was always some bullshit, and
Mhm.
I've got more trust in this one, but like there's a little bit of like uncertainty.
Well, I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
definitely like a history of part twos being a letdown.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
love Deathly Hallows Part One.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love most of Deathly Hallows Part Two,
Mhm.
and then the last 15 minutes just like it just stops being a movie.
Mm.
Like I brought this up before because Matt got me
Uh-huh.
heated about J.K. Rowling and Harry
Yeah.
Potter because fuck her
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
fuck turfs, obviously.
Mhm.
But the
Oh yeah,
fucking
just speaking on behalf of like all British people of my age range and general politics. Fuck J.K. Rowling.
yeah, there we
Yeah.
go.
Just need to get that out of the way.
Thank you. No,
Also,
that's great.
and fuck the monarchy while we're here.
Yeah. Hobie Brown
Sorry,
vibes.
continue.
Yeah.
No, this is great. This is great.
Mhm.
But like, I just remember like that bit at the end where like Hagrid, his like symbolic like father figure or uncle, or
Yeah.
godparent, he just taps Harry on the shoulders and goes, Harry, and then he walks out of frame like it's a
Yeah.
fucking SNL skit.
Yeah. I
So
was gonna
like
say,
part twos can fail with the same
yeah.
creative team. I do have
Mhm.
significantly more faith in this team
Mhm.
for sure.
I was gonna say, did Matt or someone bring up where Voldemort dies a different way because they didn't want to show his body because of Osama bin Laden being
Yes,
killed?
of course Matt brought that up.
Yeah, so
Of course he
that's the
did.
most weirdest thing I've ever like bizarre
Yeah.
reasoning for anything. They're like, well, we can't show a body.
Or
They
you
just
know what? Here's
killed bin
another part
Laden.
two. Here's another part two
Uh-huh.
story for
Hmm.
because I would call the Spider-Verse movies like YA fiction. Like,
Uh-huh.
I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
mean that. I think people see that as like a derogatory thing, and it's like
Sure.
they're annoying on Twitter, but like it's not the same thing as quality of work.
Yeah,
I
well, Spider-Man
genuinely
fans are annoying on Twitter.
Yeah.
Spider-Man
Here,
fans are
here we
fucking
are.
yeah.
Mhm.
Spider-Man fans are a different breed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But like I think of like the Hunger Games, I actually like
Ooh.
that trilogy. I even like Mockingjay Part One a lot. I think it's a very interesting movie about propaganda during war and like oppression. And
Mhm.
then Part Two comes out, and it's just like, yeah, we couldn't fix anything from the book, so it's just like you're just watching a disaster,
Mhm.
like steamroll for 2
There you go.
hours.
If you hadn't brought it up, I was just about to bring that up because I didn't really like the Hunger Games that much, so I was surprised with how much I loved. Sorry, I've got Siri talking to me right now.
Oh no, she's always listening.
It's
How do
Ultron.
I-
They're bringing him back. I
What'd she
heard that.
say?
What
What'd
was
she
How
say?
do
that?
I turn this off? Because it's trying to call my sister.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
not what I asked for.
Whoa.
I don't know what I said, but it probably sounded like the S word.
Huh. Hmm.
Anyway, sorry. Wasn't a huge fan of Hunger Games. Was surprised by how much I loved Catching Fire,
Mhm.
and then I loved Mockingjay Part One even more. I thought
Yeah.
they like you said with the propaganda stuff, also just the PTSD stuff. The acting was great. You know, it was just all around a really good movie, and I was so disappointed with the Part Two.
Yeah.
That it, you know, and as far as I know, that was all the same. Like you said, the same like people, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
So I don't know what happened there.
Yeah.
No.
Talented people who made books that are, they had their time, but they
Mhm.
really, I think, elevated the material and just didn't happen. So it's like, on some level, I will still have my guard up because again, like the Spider-Verse stuff in general
Yeah.
is not my bag. I don't
Mhm.
like that this is so associated with Spider-Man fundamentally, right?
Yeah.
The exception
Yeah.
of these movies, which have proven to be very emotionally honest and great coming of age stories and just the whole works.
Yeah.
But there's always the chance. We're all human beings can make mistakes, but they can also surprise us, and that's that's the wonder of art. Machines cannot do that, so
Mhm.
it's
Is
Yeah.
there any parts of this movie with the interconnectivity, the Spider-Verse parts that didn't work for you guys?
One kind of
Or
like
did work, you know?
yeah, one's like sticking out for me because I'm like I don't understand the thought process where um I guess for Donald Glover's cameo as I guess MCU Prowler.
I don't think it's here because I've seen people bring
Well,
that up already.
yeah,
I'm not shooting you down because I don't know their thought process behind it either.
yeah.
I don't think they thought about like this is MCU Prowler. I just think because if we're going with the thesis I have about maybe them
Uh-huh.
not being fans of that
Oh,
iteration,
okay.
right? They're like, hey, they didn't use this guy they set up,
Yeah.
Donald Glover, who inspired the very creation of Miles Morales.
Hmm.
Put him in our fucking movie. Give him
Yeah.
something, And it's like, so if you know about that campaign from Donald Glover back in the day where he's like, why can't Spider-Man be a black guy? Why can't I play Spider-Man?
Mm-hmm.
Which is how you get Miles Morales, Then it's
Yeah.
if you know that, then this is a great cameo for that. If you just know him from MCU Spider-Man appearance, then okay, you know that is the Prowler,
Mm-hmm.
and so it works like multiple folds for me.
Okay.
I don't really need an answer whether it
Yeah.
is or is not MCU thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because I don't think they even know what they're doing next, and I don't care.
Sure,
So
yeah. I just felt like it was like I was like thinking like were they trying to like tease that or something or but I doubt like for
I think
MCU, yeah.
I think in a weird way I feel very mixed on it, but I think the reaction they were looking for is the reaction I gave them, which is to go, "Yo, it's Donald Glover,"
Yeah.
and I think that was about as much as they thought about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little yeah.
So I think like there's I had a complicated reaction to it because I thought it was cool, but at the same time it also felt like they were, I guess it's different because it's not the same people making
Right.
the film, but like it did feel like this is what you could have had, this is what we promised, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because he turned up and he made reference to someone who was clearly Miles in that universe, and that was already a bit of a downgrade because it's kind of like I've always been a huge Donald Glover fan,
Mm-hmm.
and he's only gone on to do better and better things. And his I always wanted him as Peter Parker or
Mm-hmm.
as Miles.
Yeah.
And then just having that possibility downgraded until okay, well he's a cameo who kind of seems like he might be related to Miles Morales in another white Peter Parker story, and now we're also just not going to bring him back, we're not going to like follow up on any of the Homecoming stuff really,
Right.
and then dropping him in now. I also think the live action amidst the other animation was the one visual thing that looked super weird in not a good way.
Mm-hmm. And then
So-
like when you have like Mrs.
Yeah.
Chen, I guess, from Venom.
Right.
Pop up.
That was my least favorite part though.
Yeah.
yeah, it's also one of those cameo appearances where they clearly just reused footage from the
Yeah.
last appearance.
Yep.
I do think
Yeah.
with that it almost made me laugh because of how it was almost like, well, we got to do some promo for the Venom universe,
The
here.
Sonyverse, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, well, we're not going to do Morbius, obviously. Although I do think there's a joke about like a vampire being a good guy that I think is about like referencing Morbius.
Yeah.
But
They didn't
but there's
throw
a
Craven. Mhm.
there's a but when they when they go to that, it's like, remember these scenes that kind of went on too long in the Venom movies that were also like meant to be funny but like not really funny.
Yeah.
And I don't like those movies. I enjoy them for various
Mhm.
other reasons, but like those were like some of my least favorite parts of movies which I didn't like, and those are the cameos to remind you of those movies. And I
Yeah.
was just kind of like, oh yeah, remember this sort of like, at the bottom of the call sheet sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. It reminds you it is a
not
Sony movie. It is made
Yeah.
by Sony. Yeah.
yeah.
I
And
was gonna
and did you guys feel like, did that also feel like, how did you feel about the live action like reused stuff of like showing like canon moments and like showing
Yeah.
like Martin Sheen dying in Amazing Spider-Man or something like that?
I was a little confused by it because it's like their logic, at least I got from that, was because they already kind of did that in the first movie where they recreated stuff from the Raimi Spider-Man, like they reused the Cliff Robinson's like his voice, and then they pretty much used him as the model for Uncle Ben. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's like
I
know.
don't think it's a 1-to-1 comparison because that was for Peter B. Parker, who is
Yeah.
not Raimi verse Spider-Man.
Oh, but
right?
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah, I mean,
they already
they-
had something similar. Yeah.
This also leads me to my further point that these people don't like what they've done with MCU Spider-Man, and I'm not
Mm.
even saying that to be a hater because I still
Sure,
defend
yeah.
Homecoming. I'm the one last Homecoming defender online.
Yeah.
I think they just like they took from the first movie. Let's start there first. They
Yeah.
took the most iconic images from Spider-Man movies,
Mhm.
so they could have a shorthand for new audiences in the animated movies.
Yeah.
That this is the Spider-Man mythos and the beauty of the Raimi trilogy. All
Mm.
three of them. You don't even have to like the third movie like I do, but like all three of them have moments that are not just iconic in superhero movies. They're like the general public knows the
Good.
upside down kiss because of that first movie. That is an
Yeah.
iconic movie kiss.
Mhm.
Like people, I think, underestimate the value of those three movies. The dancing, which people have now reclaimed as like a
Yeah.
really fun thing to do relating to Spider-Man specifically. Like,
Mhm.
love or hate that movie, like that is part of like the cultural lexicon now.
Mhm.
A lot of other superhero movies don't have that,
No.
let alone
Yeah.
Spider-Man moments. The Amazing Spider-Man moment that popped up to my recollection the most in this movie, Across the Spider-Verse, is when it's my favorite moment in The Amazing Spider-Man when Captain Stacy's dying and they're basically just doing. He has two Uncle Bens in that movie. That's really what The Amazing Spider-Man fucks up. Is that
Mhm.
well now Captain Stacy is more important than his Uncle Ben, and it's like the whole other can of
Right.
worms,
Right. Right.
right? But I think it's a good moment in that bad movie.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You know who doesn't really have a lot of iconic individual moments as Peter Parker or Spider-Man? And it's not this actor's fault, my sweet innocent baby boy Tom Holland.
Mhm.
His movies don't have that. They don't have
No.
an emotional core or a staying power.
Yeah. Like the most I could think of is just where they copy that scene from the Spider-Man comics where he's lifting up the rubble, and that's the
Yeah.
only thing
Yeah.
I could think of.
Yeah, and he
and
has to hype
that
himself up. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
yeah, and unfortunately, that's probably the most iconic one, and is also like a, an adaptation that felt really flat for me.
Mm.
I might be the only one there, but
Mhm.
No, people
I loved.
don't care for that first one anymore, really.
Mm.
I feel.
I mean, I know I like that movie for in a lot of ways. I just remember that moment being like, this is from one of the best comics I've ever read.
Yeah, it really
So
is.
it's a high bar, and I did not feel like there was a build to it.
Mm.
And it also kind of looked like he was like lifting like the weight of like a TV off his head or something.
Yeah,
Like it,
yeah.
it didn't
And the
feel very grand.
Yeah, the comics he's lifting like the whole building there pretty much, right? It's got a lot
Yeah,
of
and it's
stone.
at the end of like it's very much like I think Aunt May's life is on the line,
Yeah.
and like there's just so much pressure at the end
Yeah.
of a story arc. Is
Yeah, good
but
writer
that's
that.
the whole other.
Yeah, good writer that Steve Ditko.
We can get into a whole can of worms about like, well, here's what I would have done with the Homecoming trilogy, but we don't have time for that because we're going to talk about a great movie.
Yeah.
Shout out to this is at least my last point, I think,
Mhm.
or at least you know what? Too let me get one more gripe out of the way.
Sure.
I don't really buy that Peter B. Parker doesn't immediately look out for Miles. They have a conversation in the middle of the chase. We leave it up to the audience to determine whether or not he was or was not calling the other Spider people to his location.
Mhm.
I don't really buy that guy sells Miles out. And I don't buy that he doesn't try to help him out from the jump. The fact that Hobie does makes a lot of sense to me. Punk rock, anarchist, fuck the system type guy, and pieces out immediately because he's like, all of this is fucked.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good character,
Awesome. Immediate fan favorite. And I don't really buy that Peter Parker would have done that. Not that I need him to be an upstanding, perfect guy either, though. I think I think we've all talked about variations of that too.
Yeah, he felt very like easily swayed, I guess, by their mission. I guess.
I think there are ways they could explain it from a character point of view, but it's that I could say, but like they're not really in the movie.
Yeah.
You could make it a thing about him. Like Miguel is like the more of a like quote unquote perfect like responsible Spider-Man, and he is like overwhelmed with this kid and focused on his own stuff and letting everything else slide and just going with someone who he's like, oh well, this guy seems like he knows what he's doing, sort of thing. There's ways that they could explain that, and maybe they will in the next one. And that's that problem again of like, there's a few things like that where I feel like they could, address it in the next one a bit, but it worked for me, but it does require like a few little jumps,
Yeah.
leaps of faith,
Yeah. Some character writing was a little like dodgy, I guess, too. Like, because Gwen kind of like screws him over a bit too.
That one I can at least, because she does. She fucks up
Yeah.
in this movie, but considering like what happens with the opening, you redo her origin, like Jack mentioned from the comic, right? I can at least understand that more, because it's like she's just been rejected from her home. Her father
Yeah.
shoots at her. He doesn't shoot at her directly, but he shoots like above her to stop her from trying to escape. Like that is an act of violence. Like her home is gone, as far as
Yeah.
she knows by that point in the film. She's been rejected by her father, who is a cop, so already
Yeah.
like a whole thorny subject. And so Miguel does rule out of fear. He does control her out of fear, which is why he's a great antagonist. It's like
Yeah.
he thinks he has to control everything. Like there's a whole fucking thesis you could write on how
Yeah.
good that character is as an antagonist. But at least that one kind of makes sense for me. Like the most I can kind of hand wave Peter's deal is like, oh, he's babysitting his little baby. He's in love with being a dad because of Miles, which then just leads me back to the whole point about like, well, he loves Miles so much. Like I feel like he would have been like, whoa, Miguel, calm down.
Yeah.
And we get like a split second of that, but it's feels like more to address like a note than a character moment, I guess.
Exactly.
But,
I wish we got more of the Spot, because actually I was really enjoying Jason Schwartzman.
You guys go, because I'm gonna fucking rant about how great the Spot is. It's just like a visual conception.
Did you guys hear it was suggested by Avi Arad?
Yeah.
By all people.
Oh, really? Well,
hey, you know what? Avi Arad has had his ups and downs. That dude is instrumental in making that original Raimi trilogy what it was, for better and worse, as we all know. But he's not always had bad instincts.
Yeah, of knowledge, for sure. What were you gonna say?
I think like the Spot, like if I'm just throwing some self promo for myself, our podcast that night.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I remember that episode.
We did an episode on the Spot because he turns up in the cartoon, for the '94 cartoon, and so we talked about that obviously. But then we did a side weird law bullshit corner, which is the name of the side series we do about like the Spider-Man comics and stuff. We spoke about the Spot's comic history, which is pretty crazy. But he is like a perfect choice, I think, for this movie, in that he is a real like villain of the week, like D-lister that you can make more out of because he has such an interesting power set. But also like you can kind of go a bit off canon with him, and it doesn't really matter because no one's like really defending him. Like I love the Spot in the comics, but I don't give a shit what you do with that character because it's the Spot,
There's one guy on Hollywood Boulevard who walked out of the theater like, they fucked him up. They fucked up the Spot.
Yeah. Spot defenders.
And there's they have tried it in the comics of like doing darker stuff with the Spot. There's some Daredevil comics where he's like wiping out dudes and in interesting ways, but I think in this they kind of milked him for all he's worth of like getting the goofy shenanigans of like those first fights, and then having him power up and show a more imaginative usage, and then who knows what's in the next one. But like he's now like Calamity Spot, like end of the world stuff. So who knows? But he looked great, and the evolution of like how how he was animated was really interesting. I really loved how they looked, and also Jason Schwartzman was great. He was really funny.
I kind of had this feeling when I heard he was the villain, and you see Miguel O'Hara kind of get the spotlight in the trailers. which I know Jack you missed, but like this is my feelings leading into the movie. I was like, all right, well Miguel's gonna be kind of like the B villain, and they're marketing him as the A villain, and then he'll be the Spot, and it's like kind of flipped this time. And I guess the Spot will be the main threshold to cross in the third movie, which is fine with
Yeah.
me, right? He does kind of disappear for a little bit of the movie,
Yep.
but
Mhm.
you know, take that or leave it. But like I had this feeling when they announced Jason Schwartzman as the Spot, I was like, well, he could do like goofy, funny. But I remember him in Scott Pilgrim, and I think people really underestimated his performance in that movie. He's real scary in that movie. He's a
Yeah.
real creep.
Mm.
He's a real good love to hate villain in that
Mhm.
movie.
Mm.
And then you know you see the trailers and you hear his like goofy bits, and I'm like, I know this is funny, but like this is kind of unsettling. I think he's gonna get really scary at the end.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And boy, was I right, because that's a
Yeah.
terrifying visual by the
Oh,
end.
yeah, no, it's like a great cliffhanger. I was gonna say they have Spider-Man Noir in the next one.
Yeah, they're
Right.
bringing
Okay.
back everyone from the first one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
first movie with cousins Nick Cage and Jason Schwartzman.
Oh, well, they gotta
in the
throw down.
movie- In the movie.
They gotta throw down at some point. You know?
Sorry, yeah.
No, yeah, that's great. Well, because I
Mm.
always think of Nick Cage whenever
Mhm.
he talks about his uncle Francis Ford Coppola, and he wanted to be in The Godfather Part 3. Do you guys know this story?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, he
No.
was like, you know, and I just done Valley Girl, and I heard my uncle was gonna make another Godfather, and I said, Uncle, you got to put me in the movie. He's like, well, you gotta audition like everyone else, and
Oh.
you know he didn't do it, but maybe one day we could work together. And I was like, God damn, dude.
And then,
Oh no,
and
he's
then-
in Peggy Sue Got Married, isn't he?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember that he was like he wanted to be in Godfather Part 3, and his uncle was like, no, like dude.
Well, yeah, that's kind of ironic too, because then he just cast his daughter.
Yeah, well that was
Yeah.
you know he
kinda
didn't
fun.
head into it doing that. but
Yeah. I missed
um,
that character actually in this movie, Spider-Man Noir.
I did too, yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess there'll be a conversation next time where they're like, hey, well, fucking, we weren't invited,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like,
Spider
what the hell?
Yeah. Him and Spider Ham.
Yeah. I guess we could start winding down a little bit. If there,
Well,
you know what? Here,
do you
yeah,
guys-
you go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys think it's interesting that like I feel like the people didn't know how they were going to handle the cop stuff in this movie, given
Yeah.
how like central his police officer father is in the first one, and then the kind of culture has changed about how people want to what people want to see
Mhm.
since the first Spider-Verse, and then they didn't like tone it back or make him not a cop or anything, but they did it like bring in a plot element where if you get promoted you get killed.
Yeah.
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 Which is why
um,
no one should be a police officer. It's for your own
yeah.
good, you know.
yeah
exactly.
so
Otherwise, the Spot will kill you.
Yeah. I was gonna add that they kind of did the thing from the Miles Morales game, I noticed, where they don't have
Right.
the NYPD, which is a terrible organization. They make it like PDNY. So I did notice
Oh.
that. So because they do that in the game to like we don't want the connotation, which is like I don't
that's
know.
interesting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
how much I could speak to that, but I did notice that. And then I guess they kind of, I don't know, they had that conversation with Gwen's dad where like she was saying like, oh, you're like a good person, so like a bad person won't like do stuff as like a cop, so I don't know how
I
to
mean,
feel about.
she does call him. She goes like, "You're a good cop, Dad," but
Hmm.
and it's like there's enough wiggle room for me to be like, maybe they're trying to fucking wiggle something in there.
Right.
But the ultimate point, I think, does save it for me, where
Hmm.
he's like, I'm gonna give all that up because I want to be a good father more than anything else. And
Yeah.
he doesn't say he fucked up, but he does recognize that he did lose his daughter because of his own actions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that's a great moment, but it was also like I feel like someone out there in this movie is like, we can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, they were trying, so
Yeah,
at
I
least,
mean,
yeah.
I'm hoping. Maybe they're all like Phil Lord and Chris Miller are actually like, yeah, we're pro police, and I'm like, no.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
I think,
yeah.
like,
Either way, I don't think they were ever gonna make any kind of like they weren't gonna rock the boat too much.
Yeah.
With a production this big.
Yeah.
That was not gonna happen. But It did amuse me that it ended up kind of being like all captains are buried.
Hmm.
Yeah.
They get They get George Stacy.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, I think like yeah, and again, all that stuff was good evolution of the stuff they did in the first film about like what people lose and that like going into what Spider-Man. But we guess we don't know what the full thesis is, you know, until
Mhm.
As of yet.
next
For-
time.
Yeah, next year.
I guess my last thing, and then I'll let you guys do last thoughts. But I think it's important to bring up. I really loved Karen Sony as Pavitr
Yeah, he was
Prabhakar,
great.
the
Yeah.
Spider-Man
Mhm.
India. There
Yeah,
is, I
excellent.
think, some very important criticism that we should all hear about that sequence in the film
Hmm.
with
Sure.
Mumbattan, which is a strange collaboration of
Mhm.
I there's a lot of New Yorks, and the Indian one gets labeled as the Indian one. Feels strange to me, but
Mhm.
this is from critic writer Siddhanta Dlaka. I'm a big fan of his. We go way back on the
Mhm.
Twitter space, but he wrote in his mostly positive review of the movie as well. I'm just gonna quote it out here. While on a mission to Miles' world, Gwen ends up taking a detour to catch up with him. They're perhaps the only two people who understand each other's burdens, but this takes a disastrous turn as Miles ends up making his way to alternate dimensions where he doesn't belong, resulting in Miguel and the other spider people reluctantly bringing him into the fold of their multiverse protecting plan, which, as it turns out, involves more than meets the eye. One of these otherworldly dimensions is dubbed Mumbattan, a portmanteau of Mumbai and Manhattan, an India-inspired world protected by its own Spider-Man, Pavitr, Prabhakar, Karen Sony, though it's here that the movie's otherwise plentiful artistic inspiration seems to run dry. When Gwen and Miles' worlds each have unique and specific comic influences, Pavitr's is neither drawn from a recognizable art style, Indian or otherwise, nor are its aesthetics used to say anything of note about its central hero. Instead, Mumbattan is often reduced to one-note jokes about the country's crowded streets. The character Pavitr, first introduced as Spider-Man India in 2004, is at least afforded the more unique and culturally specific costume of his more recent comic appearances, compared to the basic Spider-Man Verinadati and uncomfortable pointed shoes of his introduction, though he unfortunately retains the character's initial purpose. Spider-Man, but with a Western conception of Indianness grafted onto him.
Hmm.
And I think that is unfortunately something I agree with. I really like that character. I love the vibe he brings to that, like that core four group that they have in this movie with Spider-Gwen, Miles, Hobie, and Pavitr. Like that's a whole movie in and of itself, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I like the sequence. I like the action. I like all the character stuff. That's where Spot escalates into something fucking Eldritchian, you know? Which is fantastic. But you know, at the end of the day, this is a movie made by mostly white guys, and
Yeah.
I'm sure they tried to be well intentioned even with this.
Mhm.
I just think it missed the mark.
Yeah.
And it's important to listen to criticism like that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that criticism is really really apt. Yeah, I mean,
But I'll link it in the description of the episode too for the full
Uh-huh.
review, so
Yeah.
people can check it
Yeah.
out.
yeah. Well, Siddons is he's a great writer, and he's written a lot about comic book movies and stuff in a really intelligent way. I remember he did like a long run, maybe before Endgame, where he did like a essay on each MCU movie, like going into their
Yes.
politics and stuff. It was really good reading, and
Mhm.
yeah, I have got nothing to add really to what he said. I mean, I loved the character. The setting was lacking, and I think it's lacking for all the reasons that he said.
Yeah.
Yeah. On a more positive note, like I really did get a kick out of him being like, "Oh wow, the tension is palpable. Does he know about Hobie?" And then they're like, "Oh," and he's like, "Oh, he didn't." Like, and he's totally the audience. That character, Puppetry, is totally the audience. Just
Uh-huh.
like, what's gonna happen with this romance? Like, it's
Yeah.
it's so good, and I'm glad he's also in the team at the end of
Yeah.
the spider people that Gwen has assembled.
Mhm.
Because that was I mean, we're all super excited about that next movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess anything else? Final thoughts we want to cover? Thumbs up, thumbs down, surprise twist, thumbs
Yeah.
down.
No, yeah, of course thumbs up. I was gonna say I really appreciated the cameos because I felt like cameos is in like stuff I wanted to see, like Spectacular Spider-Man or like Insomniac. Well, that one was kind of like that was a fun little gag,
Yeah.
Insomniac Spider-Man. But I appreciated some of them because they felt like very like story driven, like the Spectacular Spider-Man's talking about like Uncle Ben, things like that. So
Mhm.
it felt like it was more than because I don't know, not sure if you guys read there's like a behind the scenes thing for Daredevil in Home or No Way Home where they're talking about like Charlie Cox, who's like, yeah, like why do you want me to like stand here for like when they're blocking the scene, why do you want me to stand here for like 2 seconds instead? Like, can I just like go there? Like, no, this is where the audience is gonna clap. You need to hold that for 1 second, and then like move there. So
Yeah, it's
like,
so cynical and gross.
yeah.
Yeah, great point.
So you know what I mean? Yeah.
I agree, but I also did clap.
You did clap. Well, yeah, sure. But yeah, it felt like it was more than some like made for some TikToker to like do a TikTok on it or
Yeah.
Easter egg videos. So
You
what
know,
I'm
I
trying to
will say, if this gets a renaissance of Spectacular Spider-Man
yeah,
and we
good
get
show.
more seasons, I'll
Yeah.
apparently Greg Wiseman didn't know he was in the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, that's what I heard too.
And he's not working right now, unfortunately. So
I
give him a
do. Yeah,
call.
it would make a lot of sense to continue that. And while we're at it, let's continue Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes if we're talking about cancelled
Yes, love
great
that
Marvel
show.
cartoons.
God, what a great
That's-
period we had, and then Jeff Loeb
Yeah.
like canceled all of it.
And then everything became very MCU centric.
Yeah,
But this one's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is good. We probably don't need to I'm not even being cynical because I'm also coming off Guardians 3, which I mean, if you know me, I was in the bag for that, but like I was really blown
Yeah.
away about how much I love that, and I think works as an ending to all the live action Marvel stuff. Like I
Yeah.
have no interest in catching up on ones I missed anymore or checking out, and not even out of anger, just like I've had my ending. Like I'm happy with that. I that's a fantastic movie. Superhero stuff should just be animated at this point. You can do so much more. Look at what they did here. Even if you're like not a fan of like the character or the plot stuff happening, like this is remarkably impressive shit. It's probably inspired thousands of kids to get an animation or filmmaking at this point.
Yeah. Look at that kid that did the Lego version of the trailer.
Yeah, that's fucking wild. Like I mean, who doesn't like Legos,
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a net positive as far as I'm concerned. Jack, I guess come back next year, so we can talk about the next one.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I think as well. Like my last thought on it really is that like a lot of action oriented like animation blockbusters sometimes like it's too much for me to process, especially on a big screen. It's just like I can't focus on everything. Never had that issue in this movie. There's a lot going on, but they do a really good job of like having a focal point for all the action, and so that it's never overwhelming. And I think if you make it like that, then yeah, like you said, all this subgenre should be animated. Like there's no reason to mess around with the big budget live action stuff that ends up looking worse.
Yeah.
But I thought everyone loved Ant-Man. Anyways, Gene, final thoughts.
No, it's certainly great. I think it's gonna be in my I'm gonna go see it again later today. So
Nice.
I think it'll probably make my like top 5 of like Spider-Man movies. So yeah, I think great to see this follow up, 5 years in the making, and can't wait till it's concluded next year. So big fan.
Yeah, no, same. It is my number 5 on my Spider-Man rankings, but I shared on Twitter and people got upset at least one of the rankings. Of course they did. But I should note that my top 5 are all 5-star bangers to me. I'll just say right now, it's Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man 3, Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man, and Spider-Man 2. And to me, I think this movie will only grow in my estimation if and when Beyond the Spider-Verse sticks to landing too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that many people's favorite Matrix is Matrix Reloaded. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's I love Matrix Revolutions. I could take them all as one movie. It's kind of hard for me to separate them at that point. So I imagine something similar is about to happen within the next year.
Yeah.
So yeah. Jack, thanks so much for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you.
Last second thoughts, or just where people can find you?
Well, thanks for having me. I mean, I always love talking about this kind of stuff, especially when it's a good movie.
Yeah.
I think you can check me out on my podcast, That 90s Spider-Man Show. We do go through every episode of Spider-Man the Animated Series, but we also talk about the comics and the movies and stuff. And while I'm talking, I've got Siri talking to me again.
How does he do this? Go away.
Get out of here.
We've as I'm now calling it the year of Craven, because we've got a Craven movie on the way, which would definitely not be terrible. But we've been talking about we've got some upcoming episodes about stuff on Craven in the comics, which for those who don't know, it gets real wacky. And so I probably, for SEO reasons, should have picked something Spider-Verse related, but nope, we're going for EF grade characters related to Craven instead. But yeah, you can hear me and Henry talk there, and hopefully next year Henry will be able to join us as well to talk the next Spider-Verse.
Yeah, of course. We love Henry here. We love having you here. And hey, you know what? For that Craven stuff, as that PlayStation game gets ready to come out, just keep hashtagging Craven. You're gonna you'll get attention.
That's a good point. It is the year of Craven, which which Henry already hates me for saying that so many times.
And I'm gonna have to fucking buy a PlayStation 5 or something, because I don't want to wait forever to play the game. Or I'll just go to my cousin's again and we'll just blast through it in a weekend. But I'd like to get back into to streaming on Twitch, so maybe that's something I'll add to the list. I don't know. I'm just spitballing ideas for myself. Gene, thank you again for joining me. It's great to be back with you. Even though we haven't seen each other in person yet again since I got back. But where can people find you?
Yeah, you could find me on Twitter and Instagram, Gene9892.
What's your address?
Can't say that, no.
Okay, just trying it out. And you can find me at the Diego Crespo on Twitter. Check out the Waffle Press on Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, and Patreon, where you guessed it, there will be other stuff by the time this comes out. You're gonna get some secret retrospectives. My cat is jumping around right now. My cat will not be on the Patreon. There's a Superman special that we recorded before I left that I was supposed to get out before I left, but that's fine.
Yeah,
it's it'll be out in time for the Flash, so go check that out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks for watching. We have been professionally unprofessional. Bye-bye.